Elliot Maddox has everything money can buy but feels nothing until he follows his mysterious housekeeper one night and witnesses a love so pure it breaks through the walls around his frozen heart. Raina Porter works 5 jobs to care for her mother with dementia, invisible to the powerful man whose marble floors she polishes each morning. But when their worlds collide, both will discover that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, it's measured in the courage to love without limits. This is a story of transformation, sacrifice, and the unexpected places where love finds us. Before we start this story, comment below from where you are watching us. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Elliot Maddox's penthouse, bouncing off the marble countertops and sleek furniture. At precisely 8 a.m., the elevator doors opened and Raina Porter stepped out, dressed in her simple navy uniform. She carried her cleaning supplies in a plastic caddy, her movements practiced and efficient. Raina was 28, with dark skin that seemed to glow even in the harsh artificial lighting of the penthouse. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, not a strand out of place. Her eyes, though, they carried a weight that didn't match her composed exterior. "Good morning, Mr. Maddox," she said, her voice soft but professional as she spotted Elliot sitting at the kitchen island, scrolling through his phone. Elliot barely looked up. At 34, he was already one of the most successful real estate developers in Manhattan. His face could have been handsome if it wasn't always frozen in a mask of indifference. His suits cost more than Raina made in 3 months. "Morning," he muttered, not really seeing her. He never really saw her. That was part of her job, to be invisible. Raina moved past him, starting her routine in the guest bathroom. She knew his schedule by heart. In exactly 20 minutes, he would leave for the office. He'd return at 7:30 p.m. unless he had a business dinner. Fridays, he worked from home. Sundays, he was never there. The door slammed as Elliot left. Raina released a breath she didn't know she was holding. It was easier when he wasn't there, watching her with those cold blue eyes. "Another day, another dollar," she whispered to herself, a mantra she repeated to get through long days of cleaning homes that weren't hers, serving people who would forget her name if she didn't wear it pinned to her chest. Across town, Elliot sat in the back of his town car, staring at spreadsheets on his tablet. His driver, Marcus, navigated through the morning traffic with practiced ease. "Your 9 a.m. with Westbrook Investments was moved to 9:30. His assistant's voice came through the car speaker. "And your father called again. He wants to discuss the Hudson Yards project." Elliot's jaw tightened. "Tell him I'll call when I have time." He specifically said, "I said I'll call when I have time, Claire." The line went silent. Then, "Yes, Mr. Maddox." His father, Richard Maddox, was the founder of Maddox Luxury Properties. He'd handed the company to Elliot 5 years ago, but he still tried to control everything from his retirement home in Florida. Every decision Elliot made was scrutinized, criticized. "Business isn't about feelings, son. It's about results. The moment you let emotions in, you've already lost." His father's words echoed in his head as he walked into the sleek glass building that housed his company. Employees scattered like startled birds as he moved through the office. He preferred it that way. Fear was more reliable than respect. Back at the penthouse, Raina worked methodically. Dust, vacuum, polish, wash. She moved from room to room, erasing any evidence of human presence. Elliot liked everything perfect, sterile, like a showroom, not a home. As she changed the sheets on his king-sized bed, her phone buzzed. The screen showed Sunny Pines Care Home. Her heart stuttered. "Hello? Is everything okay?" The panic in her voice was immediate. "Ms. Porter, everything's fine. Your mother just had a little episode this morning. She's calm now, but she was asking for you quite insistently." Raina closed her eyes, relief washing over her. "I'll be there tonight after work, as usual. Can you put her on the phone?" "Of course." A moment later, a fragile voice came through. "Raina? Is that you, baby?" "Yes, Mama, it's me. How are you feeling today? Where are you? They said you'd be here yesterday." Raina's throat tightened. Her mother's dementia had been getting worse. "I was there yesterday, Mama. Remember, we sang your favorite songs together." "Did we?" The confusion in her mother's voice broke Raina's heart. I don't remember." "It's okay. I'll be there tonight. We can sing again. You promise? You won't forget me." "I could never forget you, Mama, never. I'll be there after work, just like always." After she hung up, Raina sat on the edge of Elliot's perfectly made bed, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. 5 years of watching her vibrant, strong mother fade away. 5 years of working every job she could find to keep her in a private room at Sunny Pines. where the staff treated her with dignity instead of like just another burden. She allowed herself exactly 2 minutes of tears before wiping her face and standing up. No time for breakdowns. She had 3 more hours at Elliot's, then a 4-hour shift at the coffee shop before she could see her mother. The day passed in a blur. Elliot returned from work earlier than usual, his face stormy. Raina was in the kitchen, wiping down the counters one last time. "Mr. Maddox," she said, startled. "I was just finishing up." He nodded, loosening his tie. "Fine. I'll be in my office." Raina gathered her things quickly, not wanting to disturb him when he was in one of his moods. She'd worked for him long enough to recognize the signs, the tight jaw, the furrow between his brows. Something at work had upset him. As she was about to leave, she realized she'd left her phone charger in the kitchen. She slipped back, hoping to retrieve it without being noticed. That's when she heard it, a raised voice coming from Elliot's office. He was on the phone and he was angry. "I don't care what Dad thinks, it's my company now and I'll run it how I see fit." Raina froze. In 2 years of working for Elliot Maddox, she had never heard him raise his voice. "No, you listen to me. I've spent my entire life trying to live up to his impossible standards. Nothing was ever good enough. Well, guess what? The Hudson Yards deal is going through my way, and if he doesn't like it, he can come out of retirement and try to stop me." There was a crash, something thrown against a wall. Raina jumped. She should leave right now before he caught her eavesdropping, but as she turned to go, she knocked over a vase. It wobbled, but didn't fall. Still, the noise was enough. "Who's there?" Elliot's voice was sharp. Raina stepped into view, her heart pounding. "I'm sorry, Mr. Maddox, I forgot my phone charger. I didn't mean to overhear." Elliot stood in the doorway of his office, his tie undone, his normally perfect hair mussed from running his hands through it. For a moment he looked almost human, frustrated, tired, maybe even a little embarrassed. "It's fine," he said, his voice carefully controlled again. "Just go." Raina nodded, grabbing her charger from the counter. As she walked to the elevator, she could feel his eyes on her back. The next morning, Raina arrived at work to find Elliot already gone. There was a note on the counter. "Working from office today. EM." She was relieved. After yesterday's awkward encounter, she wasn't ready to face him. The day passed quickly, and as she was finishing the last of the dishes, her phone rang again. Sunny Pines, for the 2nd day in a row. That was never good. "Ms. Porter, I'm sorry to bother you again, but your mother is having a difficult day. She's refusing to take her medication, and she's quite agitated." "I'll be there as soon as I can," Raina said, her voice tight with worry. "Can you put Dr. Miller on?" As she spoke with the doctor, she didn't hear the elevator doors open. She didn't notice Elliot standing there, watching her, hearing her side of the conversation. "No, please don't sedate her. I'm coming right now. Just tell her I'm on my way. Tell her I promised and I never break my promises to her." She hung up and turned, gasping when she saw Elliot. "Mr. Maddox, I didn't hear you come in." He was looking at her strangely, as if seeing her for the first time. "Is everything all right?" "Yes," she said automatically, then shook her head. "No, actually, it's a family emergency. I need to leave a little early today, if that's okay." Elliot nodded slowly. "Of course. Thank you. I've finished everything except the guest room, but I can come in early tomorrow to—" "Don't worry about it," he interrupted. "Family comes first." The words seemed to surprise him as much as they surprised her. Elliot Maddox, the man whose family relationship seemed to consist entirely of angry phone calls, telling her that family came first. "Thank you," she said again, gathering her things quickly. As she rushed to the elevator, she didn't see the curious look on Elliot's face. She didn't know that for the first time in the 2 years she'd worked for him, he was actually wondering about her life, who she was when she wasn't cleaning his home, what family emergency could bring tears to the eyes of someone who always seemed so composed. Later that night, after a grueling 2 hours at Sunny Pines where she'd calmed her mother, sung to her, and finally gotten her to take her medication, Raina sat alone in the home's small cafeteria. She was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. The staff had offered her a cup of tea and a stale muffin, their way of showing support. They knew her situation. They knew she was fighting a losing battle against her mother's illness, working herself to the bone to pay for care that was draining her savings, despite her multiple jobs. Alone in the dim cafeteria, with no one watching, no mask to maintain, Raina finally let herself cry. She pressed a dish towel to her face to muffle the sound as the tears came, tears of exhaustion, of grief, of fear for the future. She didn't know that outside the window, standing in the shadows of the parking lot, Elliot Maddox was watching her. He had followed her from his penthouse, curious about this woman who moved through his life like a ghost, but whose eyes held a depth of feeling he couldn't comprehend. He hadn't meant to invade her privacy. He told himself he was just concerned about an employee, but the truth was, something about Raina Porter had cracked the icy shell around his heart, a shell that had been forming since he was 15, standing stoic at his mother's funeral, while his father whispered, "Don't you dare cry, Maddox men don't show weakness." And now, watching Raina weep alone in that dreary cafeteria, something inside Elliot broke. Because for all his wealth, all his power, all his carefully constructed walls, he couldn't remember the last time he had felt anything real. He turned away, unseen, and walked back to his car. But he knew he would return tomorrow night, and the night after that, until he understood what it was about Raina Porter that made him feel human again for the first time in years. Inside, Raina dried her tears and stood up. She had a night shift at the 24-hour pharmacy to get to. There was no time for self-pity. Her mother needed her, and Raina Porter never broke a promise, especially not to the woman who had sacrificed everything to raise her alone. As she walked out into the cool night air, she had no idea that her carefully separated worlds were about to collide, that the man whose flaws she polished was now irrevocably curious about the woman who polished them. That Elliot Maddox, who had everything money could buy but nothing that truly mattered, was about to learn what real wealth looked like, and it would change both their lives forever. The next morning, Elliot sat at his kitchen island, coffee untouched, staring out the window at the Manhattan skyline. He hadn't slept well. Images of Raina, her face streaked with tears in that dimly lit cafeteria, kept playing in his mind. The elevator dinged, and Raina stepped out, right on time as always. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes barely concealed with makeup. "Good morning, Mr. Maddox," she said, her voice professional despite her exhaustion. Elliot studied her face. How had he never noticed the weight she carried? How had he looked at her every day for 2 years and not seen her? "Morning," he replied, then added, "Is your family emergency resolved?" Surprise flickered across her face at his question. "It's ongoing, but thank you for asking." She moved to the sink, filling her bucket with warm water and soap, her movements automatic. Elliot watched her, wondering about the woman his maid became when she left his penthouse, the woman who sang to an elderly patient in a nursing home, who pressed her forehead against another's and promised to return. "Raina," he said suddenly. She turned, startled to hear him use her name. "Yes, Mr. Maddox? How long have you worked for me?" 2 years next month. "And in those 2 years I've never asked you a single personal question, have I?" Raina's expression was guarded. "That's not unusual, sir. Most employers prefer professional boundaries." "That's not what I asked," she sighed. "No, you haven't." Elliot nodded, feeling an unfamiliar emotion. Was it shame? "I apologize for that. It was inconsiderate." Raina didn't know what to make of this. Elliot Maddox apologizing to her. "It's fine, really. I'm just here to do my job." "And you do it exceptionally well," he said. "I've never properly acknowledged that either." Now she was really confused. "Thank you, Mr. Maddox. Is there something specific you need today?" Elliot stood up, straightening his already perfect tie. "No, I just wanted to say that if you need more time off for your family situation, it won't be a problem." "That's very generous, but I can't afford—" She stopped herself, embarrassed. "Can't afford what?" "Nothing. I appreciate the offer, but I'll manage my schedule." Elliot wanted to press further, but something in her expression stopped him. Pride, the same pride he recognized in himself. "Very well. I'll be at the office until late tonight. Board meeting." As he walked to the elevator, he found himself wanting to say more, to somehow bridge the enormous gap between employer and employee, but the words wouldn't come. They never did. His father had made sure of that. At the office, Elliot couldn't focus. The quarterly reports blurred before his eyes, replaced by images of Raina at the nursing home, moving from patient to patient with gentle hands and a soft voice. "Mr. Maddox," his assistant's voice broke through his thoughts. "The board members are waiting in the conference room." "Right, of course." He straightened his shoulders, put on the mask of the ruthless CEO, and walked into the meeting. But something had shifted inside him. For the first time in years, he was questioning the life he'd built. That evening, instead of going home, Elliot found himself driving to Sunny Pines care home again. He parked across the street, feeling ridiculous. What was he doing? Spying on his maid? He should leave. This was inappropriate, invasive, but then he saw her. Raina walked up the path to the entrance, still wearing her uniform from her second job at the coffee shop. Even after what must have been a 12-hour workday, there was a lightness to her step as she approached the nursing home. Elliot couldn't help himself. He got out of his car and moved closer, standing near a window where he could see inside without being noticed. The scene that unfolded made his chest ache. Raina entered a room where an older woman sat in a wheelchair, staring blankly at the wall. The resemblance between them was unmistakable. This had to be Raina's mother. "Hi, Mama," Raina said, kneeling beside the wheelchair. "It's me, your Raina. I brought your favorite lotion today, lavender, just like you used to wear when I was little." The older woman didn't respond, but Raina wasn't deterred. She began to massage lotion into her mother's hands, talking all the while. "Remember how you used to rub this on my hands in winter when they got all cracked from the cold? You'd say, 'Hands tell our story, baby girl. Take care of them.'" As Elliot watched, Raina moved around the room, tidying things that were already tidy, adjusting pictures on the nightstand. She pulled out a hairbrush and began gently brushing her mother's grey hair. "Let's get you looking pretty, Mama. You always said a woman should look her best even when she doesn't feel it." To Elliot's surprise, the older woman suddenly spoke. "Raina? Is that you?" The joy that lit up Raina's face was like sunrise. "Yes, Mama. It's me. You look tired, baby. Are you working too hard again?" "Don't you worry about me. I'm fine. How are you feeling today?" The lucidity didn't last. Within minutes, Raina's mother was staring at the wall again, the brief connection gone. But Raina didn't show any disappointment. She simply shifted gears, pulling out a book. "Let's read where we left off yesterday, Mama." Elliot stood there, transfixed, as Raina read aloud from a well-worn paperback. Her voice changed with each character, bringing the story to life. Her mother didn't respond, but Raina read as if she were performing for a captive audience. After the reading, Raina helped feed her mother dinner, wiping her chin with such tenderness that Elliot had to look away. It felt too intimate, too pure to witness. But he couldn't leave, because what he was seeing was unlike anything in his world of cutthroat deals and power plays. This was love in its purest form, expecting nothing in return, given freely even when it wasn't recognized. When Raina's mother fell asleep, Raina didn't leave. She sat beside her, holding her hand, humming softly. Then she took out a small sewing kit and began repairing a tear in her mother's blanket. Finally, a nurse came in to tell Raina that visiting hours were ending. Raina nodded, leaned down to kiss her mother's forehead and whispered, "I'll be back tomorrow, Mama. I always come back." That was the moment Elliot broke. Standing in the shadows outside Sunny Pines, watching Raina press her forehead against her sleeping mother's, promising to return, he felt tears on his face for the first time since his mother's funeral 19 years ago. Because in that moment, he understood what he'd been missing, what his father had robbed him of when he taught him that emotions were weakness, that vulnerability was failure. Love, unconditional, unguarded, unselfish love. Elliot wiped his face quickly as Raina exited the building. He ducked behind a tree, not wanting her to see him. As she walked to the bus stop, shoulders slumped with exhaustion, he made a decision. The next morning, Raina arrived at Elliot's penthouse to find it empty. On her cleaning cart was a plain white envelope with her name written on it. Her stomach dropped. Was she being fired? Had she done something wrong? With trembling fingers, she opened it. Inside was a folded note in masculine handwriting. "I saw I had no right to, but I needed to understand why the silence in my home felt different when you were near. Now I know. You carry love into every room you enter, even the ones like mine that don't deserve it." Raina read the note 3 times, her heart pounding. He had followed her. He had seen her at Sunny Pines, with her mother, in her most private, vulnerable moments. She was still standing there, note in hand, when the elevator doors opened and Elliot stepped out. "You followed me," she said, anger rising through her shock. "You invaded my privacy." Elliot had the decency to look ashamed. "I did. I'm sorry." "Sorry?" Raina's voice rose. "Do you have any idea how inappropriate that was? How violating?" "I know. I have no excuse." "Then why? Why would you do that?" Elliot ran a hand through his hair, looking less like the polished CEO and more like a man struggling to understand himself. "Because when I saw you crying that night, here in the kitchen, it was the most real thing I'd witnessed in years, and I needed to understand why." Raina shook her head, tears of anger and embarrassment burning her eyes. "You had no right to follow me, no right to spy on me and my mother." "You're right," he said softly. "I didn't. What am I to you, some kind of curiosity? Some sad story to make you feel better about your perfect life?" "No," Elliot said, his voice strained. You're You're someone who made me question everything I thought I knew about what matters." Raina laughed bitterly. "Well, I'm so glad my struggles could provide such an enlightening experience for you." She crumpled the note in her fist. "You don't get to cry over something you can't even begin to understand." Elliot stepped closer, his eyes pleading. "Then teach me. Show me how to be someone who deserves to understand." The raw vulnerability in his voice stopped Raina's anger cold. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw past the expensive suit and perfect hair to the lost man underneath. "Why?" she asked more softly now. "Why do you care?" Elliot's answer surprised them both. "Because I don't think I've ever truly cared about anything, and it's killing me." The honesty of his words hung in the air between them. Raina didn't know what to say. This man who had everything money could buy was admitting he had nothing that mattered. "I should go," she said finally. I can't be here right now." Elliot nodded. "I understand. Take the day off, take the week if you need it. Your job will be waiting." "And if I don't want to come back? If I don't want to work for someone who would invade my privacy like that?" "Then I'll write you a recommendation that will get you any job in the city," he said simply, "and I'll still pay you for the month." Raina gathered her things, her emotions too complicated to sort through, as she reached the elevator. Elliot spoke again. "Raina, your mother, she has dementia?" Raina's shoulders stiffened, but she nodded. "Early onset, 5 years now. And you're caring for her alone?" "I don't have anyone else." The words came out more vulnerable than she intended. Elliot hesitated, then asked, "How many jobs are you working to pay for her care?" Raina turned to face him, chin raised defiantly. 5. Your place in the mornings, the coffee shop afternoons, night shifts at a 24-hour pharmacy 3 times a week, weekend receptionist at a hair salon, and online data entry whenever I can fit it in. Elliot's face paled. 5 jobs? How do you even sleep?" "I sleep enough," she said, though they both knew it was a lie. "I do what I have to do. That's what love is, Mr. Maddox. It's not a feeling. It's a choice you make every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." With that, she stepped into the elevator, leaving Elliot standing alone in his perfect, empty penthouse. For 3 days, Raina didn't return to work. She used the unexpected time off to spend more hours at Sunny Pines, to catch up on sleep, to think about what had happened with Elliot. Part of her was still angry. Who did he think he was, following her like that? But another part, a part she didn't want to acknowledge, was touched by his reaction, by the tears she'd glimpsed in his eyes as he'd asked her to teach him, because she'd seen it then, the real man underneath the power and precision, just a boy who never learned how to love. On the 4th day, she returned to the penthouse, having decided to give notice. She couldn't work for him anymore, not after what had happened. It was too complicated, too confusing. But when she arrived, Elliot was waiting for her, sitting at the kitchen island with 2 cups of coffee. "Before you say anything," he began, pushing 1 cup toward her, "I want you to know that I spent these past days thinking about what you said, about love being a choice you make every day." Raina set down her bag but didn't take the coffee. "I came to give my 2 weeks' notice." Elliot nodded. "I understand, but before you decide for sure, I'd like to show you something." He pulled out his tablet and opened a document, sliding it across the counter to her. Raina looked down at it, confused. "What is this?" "It's a donation I made to Sunny Pines Care Home, for upgraded facilities, new equipment, staff training programs, and a fund to cover your mother's care costs for the next 10 years. Raina's knees weakened. She had to grab the counter to steady herself. "What? Why would you?" "Because I can," Elliot said simply. "Because I have more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes, and you're working yourself to death to pay for your mother's care." Tears sprang to Raina's eyes. "I can't accept this. It's too much." "It's nothing to me," Elliot said. "Financially, I mean. But what it represents isn't nothing. It's me trying to make a choice. The kind of choice you make every day." Raina shook her head, overwhelmed. "I don't understand." "Neither do I, completely," Elliot admitted. "But I know that watching you with your mother showed me what I've been missing, what my father taught me to reject, and I want to learn how to be different." He stood up, moving closer to her. "I'm not asking you to forgive me for following you. I'm not even asking you to keep working here. I'm just asking you to believe that I want to change, that seeing you, really seeing you, changed something in me." Raina looked up at him, seeing vulnerability in those blue eyes that had once seemed so cold. "What exactly do you want from me, Elliot?" It was the first time she'd used his first name. "I want to understand what makes you, you. I want to learn how to care about something the way you care about your mother. I want—" He paused. struggling with words that didn't come easily to him. I want to know what love looks like, because I don't think I've ever really seen it before, not until I saw you at Sunny Pines. The rawness of his confession left Raina speechless. This powerful man, this titan of industry, was standing before her like a child asking to be taught the most basic human emotion. Please, he added softly, I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but I'm asking anyway. Raina took a deep breath. I need time to think about this, about all of it. Elliot nodded. Of course, take all the time you need. As Raina left the penthouse, her mind was spinning. The donation to Sunny Pines would change everything. She could quit most of her jobs, she could spend real time with her mother, she could sleep, but accepting felt wrong somehow, like she was being bought. And yet, she couldn't deny the sincerity she'd seen in Elliot's eyes, the genuine desire to change. That night, as she sat beside her mother's bed at Sunny Pines, Raina was still undecided, until the head nurse, Mrs. Jenkins, came in with a strange expression on her face. Raina, dear, the strangest thing has happened. A very large donation came in today, specifically for facility improvements, and there's a fund for your mother's care. Raina nodded slowly. I know. Mrs. Jenkins raised her eyebrows. You do? Do you also know that the donor requested to remain anonymous? There's just a small plaque to be placed in the recreation room that says, donated by a man who finally learned what love looks like. Raina's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't done it for recognition or to impress her. He hadn't even used his name. When will the improvements start? She asked. That's the other thing, Mrs. Jenkins said, still looking amazed. They've already begun. A team arrived this afternoon with new curtains, books, music equipment. They're coming back tomorrow with more. It's like Christmas in August. After Mrs. Jenkins left, Raina sat in silence, watching her mother sleep peacefully. The weight that had been crushing her for 5 years felt lighter somehow. As she was leaving Sunny Pines that night, she spotted a black car parked across the street. Elliot was sitting behind the wheel, not watching the nursing home this time, but simply waiting for her. Raina crossed the street and approached the car. Elliot rolled down the window, his expression uncertain. I didn't come to spy, he said quickly. I wanted to make sure you got home safely. These streets aren't the best at night. Raina studied his face in the dim light. The donation. You didn't put your name on it. It wasn't about me, he said simply. And in that moment, Raina made a choice. She opened the car door and got in. My apartment is on 156th Street, she said. And I haven't had dinner yet, have you? The smile that spread across Elliot's face was unlike any expression she'd seen on him before. It reached his eyes, softening the sharp lines of his face, making him look younger, more approachable. No, he said, I haven't. As they drove away from Sunny Pines, Raina knew this was the beginning of something neither of them fully understood yet. But for the first time in years, she felt a flutter of hope that had nothing to do with duty or obligation. And for Elliot, sitting beside this woman who had unknowingly begun to thaw his frozen heart, the world suddenly seemed full of possibilities he'd never allowed himself to imagine. 2 weeks passed, bringing changes neither Raina nor Elliot could have imagined. The small diner near Raina's apartment had become their regular meeting place. Every evening after Raina visited her mother, Elliot would be waiting in his car to drive her there. Tonight, they sat in their usual booth by the window. Elliot, who once ate only at 5-star restaurants, was becoming fond of Betty's Diner and their famous meatloaf. You're staring again, Raina said, a smile playing at her lips as she cut into her chicken pot pie. Elliot didn't look away. I'm trying to figure you out. There's nothing to figure out. I'm an open book. That's what fascinates me, he admitted. I've spent my entire life hiding who I am. But you're just authentically you, no matter where you are. Raina shrugged. My mama raised me that way. She always said pretending to be something you're not is too exhausting to maintain. Your mother sounds wise. She was, still is, on her good days. Raina's expression softened. She raised me alone after my father left when I was 4, worked 3 jobs, but still made time to help with homework, to be at my school plays. Elliot was quiet for a moment. My mother died when I was 15. Cancer. Raina reached across the table and touched his hand. I'm sorry. She was different from my father. Warm, kind, but he... Elliot's jaw tightened. After she died, he became harder, colder. He said he was preparing me for the real world, but I think he just didn't know how to deal with his grief. That's no excuse for how he treated you. Maybe not, but it shaped me into who I am. Raina studied his face. And who is that, exactly? Elliot looked down at her hand. still resting on his. I'm not sure anymore. I thought I knew. Successful, powerful, respected if not liked. But lately I've been wondering if any of that matters. What does matter to you, Elliot? He looked up, his blue eyes intense. I'm still figuring that out. The waitress brought their coffee, interrupting the moment. Elliot watched as Raina thanked her by name, asked about her kids. It was so natural, this connection she formed with everyone around her. You know, Raina said, stirring sugar into her coffee, you don't have to pick me up every night. I've been taking the bus for years. I know I don't have to, I want to. Why? Elliot considered the question. Because when I'm with you I feel different, better somehow. Raina smiled, but there was caution in her eyes. I'm not a project, Elliot, or a charity case. I never thought you were, he said firmly. If anything, you're the teacher, and I'm the student. And what am I teaching you? How to be human again. The sincerity in his voice made Raina's heart skip. This was dangerous territory. He was her employer, or had been until she'd officially quit last week to focus on spending time with her mother, now that Elliot's donation had removed the financial pressure. Speaking of teaching, she said, changing the subject, Mrs. Jenkins told me they're starting a music therapy program at Sunny Pines, thanks to your donation. She thinks it might help my mother. Elliot nodded, allowing the subject change. I read some research on music therapy for dementia patients. It can be remarkably effective. You researched dementia treatments? He looked almost embarrassed. I wanted to understand what you've been dealing with. Raina didn't know what to say. The idea of Elliot Maddox, notorious workaholic, taking time to research her mother's condition, touched her deeply. Thank you, she said simply. After dinner, Elliot drove Raina home as usual. The apartment building was in a neighborhood he would have avoided a month ago, old, run down with security gates that had seen better days. But now, he saw it differently. He saw the children playing on the sidewalk despite the late hour, the elderly neighbors sitting on stoops chatting, the sense of community that was absent from his sterile high-rise. Would you like to come up? Raina asked as he parked. She'd never invited him in before. Elliot hesitated. Are you sure? It's not much. Nothing like your place, but it's home. I'd love to. Raina's apartment was on the 3rd floor, a small one-bedroom with worn furniture but immaculate cleanliness. The walls were covered with photos. Raina as a child with her mother, Raina at graduation, Raina and her mother at what looked like a beach. You have a beautiful home, Elliot said, and meant it, because despite its size and age, the apartment felt lived in, loved, in a way his penthouse never had. It's small, but it works for me. I'm not here much anyway with all the jobs. You could move somewhere nicer now, Elliot said carefully. The money from the fund is for my mother's care, Raina finished firmly. I'm not using it for myself. Elliot nodded, understanding her pride. Can I ask you something personal? You can ask, I might not answer. Fair enough. He picked up a photo of her mother, younger, vibrant, laughing. When was she diagnosed? Raina's face softened at the sight of the photo. 5 years ago. She was only 53. I noticed she was forgetting things, getting confused. At first I thought it was just stress. She was working hard like always. But then she got lost coming home from the grocery store she'd been going to for 20 years. Elliot listened as Raina described the diagnosis, the rapid progression, the difficult decision to move her mother to Sunny Pines when caring for her at home became impossible. The hardest part is the good days, Raina said, her voice catching. When she's lucid, when she knows who I am and remembers everything, it gives me hope. But then the next day or even an hour later, she's gone again. It's like losing her over and over. Elliot moved closer, hesitantly putting an arm around her shoulders. You haven't lost her, not really. You keep showing up, keep loving her. That matters, even if she doesn't always recognize it. Raina looked up at him, surprised by his insight. When did you get so wise? I'm just repeating what I've learned from watching you. Their eyes held for a long moment. Then, slowly, Elliot leaned down and kissed her. It was gentle, questioning. Raina froze for a second, then kissed him back. When they pulled apart, she looked as surprised as he felt. I shouldn't have done that, Elliot said immediately. I'm sorry. Don't be, Raina replied softly. I'm not. They sat on her small couch, talking until well past midnight. Elliot told her about growing up with a father who measured love in achievements, about losing his mother and burying his grief because showing it was weakness. Raina talked about her dreams of going to college, put on hold when her mother got sick, about the book of poetry she wrote in stolen moments between jobs. When Elliot finally left, something had shifted between them. The lines had blurred. They were no longer employer and employee, benefactor and recipient. They were just two people, connecting in a way neither had expected. The next morning Elliot woke to his phone ringing. His father's name flashed on the screen. With a sigh, he answered. "Hello, Dad. I just got off the phone with Harold Bishop." His father's sharp voice came through without greeting. "He says you pulled out of the Lincoln Square development. Is that true?" Elliot sat up in bed. "Yes, it's true." "Are you out of your mind? That deal was worth millions. It would have displaced 50 families from affordable housing. We can find another location." The silence on the other end was ominous. Then, "Who are you, and what have you done with my son?" "Very funny, Dad. I'm not joking, Elliot. Since when do you care about affordable housing? You're in the luxury real estate business. Maybe it's time to diversify." Richard Maddox's voice hardened. "This is about a woman, isn't it?" Elliot froze. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb. Your assistant mentioned you've been leaving early, missing meetings, and now this sudden attack of conscience? There's a woman involved. My personal life is none of your business. It is when it affects my company." "Your company?" Elliot's temper flared. "You handed Maddox properties to me 5 years ago. It's my company now. And you're running it into the ground." "No, Dad. I'm running it differently, maybe even better." His father scoffed. "Better for who? Not the shareholders. There's more to business than just shareholder value." "Who is she, Elliot? Some bleeding heart activist who's filling your head with nonsense about social responsibility?" Elliot thought of Raina, her quiet strength, her unwavering love for her mother, her dignity despite working 5 jobs just to survive. "She's someone who reminded me there are things more important than money," he said finally. "And that's all you need to know." He hung up, his father's angry voice cut off mid-sentence. It felt good, liberating. Later that day, Elliot did something he'd never done before. He left work at noon. He drove to Sunny Pines, where he'd arranged a surprise for Raina and her mother. When he arrived, he found Raina in the recreation room, sitting beside her mother's wheelchair. A small crowd had gathered around them, residents and staff alike. At the center of the room was a brand new piano. "What's going on?" Raina asked when she spotted him. Elliot smiled. "A little surprise. I remembered you mentioned your mother was a piano teacher before she got sick." Raina's eyes widened. "You bought a piano for Sunny Pines? And hired a music therapist? She's starting today." He nodded toward a young woman arranging sheet music on the piano. "Her name is Melody. Fitting, right? She specializes in memory care." Tears filled Raina's eyes. "Elliot, I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything. Just watch." Melody sat at the piano and began to play a soft, familiar tune. "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." The residents listened, some swaying gently, others simply watching. Then something remarkable happened. Raina's mother, who had been staring blankly at the wall, turned toward the music. Her fingers began to move in her lap, as if playing along. "Mama," Raina whispered, kneeling beside her. "Do you remember this song?" Slowly, her mother nodded. "I taught you when you were little." Raina gasped, grabbing her mother's hand. Yes, you did." Melody moved from the piano bench, gesturing for Raina's mother to take her place. With help, the elderly woman was positioned at the keys. Everyone waited, breaths held. Then, miraculously, her fingers found the notes. Shaky at first, then more confident. The melody emerged, imperfect but recognizable. Raina's tears flowed freely now. Elliot stood back, watching the scene unfold, his own eyes damp. This was what mattered. After the impromptu concert, Raina's mother was tired but more alert than she'd been in months. She even recognized Raina without prompting. "Who's your friend?" she asked, looking at Elliot. Raina hesitated. "This is Elliot, Mama. He's a good friend. Handsome," her mother observed with a twinkle in her eye that made Raina blush. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Porter," Elliot said, taking her frail hand gently. "Call me Vivian," she replied. "Any friend of my Raina is a friend of mine." Later, as they walked to the parking lot, Raina was quiet. Elliot worried he'd overstepped again. "Are you upset about the piano?" he asked. She stopped walking and turned to face him. "No, I'm overwhelmed by all of it. The donation, the piano, the music therapist, and by whatever this is between us." Elliot took her hands in his. "What do you want it to be?" "I don't know. It's complicated. A month ago, I was your maid, Elliot. Now you're buying pianos for my mother and kissing me on my couch. Does that bother you?" "It confuses me," she admitted. "This isn't some fairy tale. You're a wealthy CEO. I'm a housekeeper with a high school diploma. We come from different worlds. Maybe that's exactly why we need each other, Elliot said softly. Your world has everything mine was missing. Raina looked into his eyes, searching. And what if this is just a phase for you? A rich man's fascination with how the other half lives? The question stung, but Elliot understood her fear. I can't prove what's in my heart, Raina. I can only ask you to give me the chance to show you over time. Before she could answer, her phone rang. It was Sunny Pines. Her mother had become agitated after they left, asking repeatedly for Raina. She needed to go back. Go, Elliot said. I'll wait. You don't have to. I want to. The simple phrase was becoming their refrain. Not obligation, but choice. Raina returned to her mother's side, calming her with gentle words and touch. When Vivian finally settled, Raina sang to her until she fell asleep. It was a side of Raina that Elliot had glimpsed before, but seeing it now after their conversation moved him in a new way. This wasn't just about learning from Raina anymore. This was about wanting to be worthy of her, about becoming the kind of man who deserved someone as genuine and loving as she was. When they left Sunny Pines that evening, Raina was exhausted but happy. Her mother's brief return to herself during the piano session was a gift she hadn't expected. Thank you, she said as they got into Elliot's car. Not just for today, but for everything. Elliot reached over and squeezed her hand. You don't need to thank me. Seeing your mother play, seeing your face when she recognized you, that was thanks enough. They drove in comfortable silence until Elliot suddenly pulled over. What's wrong? Raina asked. Nothing. I just want to show you something. They were parked in front of a small brick building with a for lease sign in the window. What is this place? Raina asked as they got out of the car. Elliot led her to the window. It used to be a bookstore. I bought the building last week. Why? Because of something you said at dinner a few nights ago, about how you wished there was a bookstore near Sunny Pines, somewhere you could take your mother on her good days. Raina's eyes widened. Elliot, I thought maybe we could turn it into a bookstore cafe, accessible for elderly visitors with comfortable seating, good lighting, maybe even a small performance space for music. We? Elliot turned to face her. I know you wanted to go to college for business before your mother got sick. I thought maybe you'd want to run it, be the manager or even the owner eventually. Raina was speechless. I don't have the experience. You have more business sense than half the executives I know. You've been balancing 5 jobs and your mother's care for years. That takes more skill than running a Fortune 500 company, believe me. But the cost is an investment. In the community, in Sunny Pines residents, and, he hesitated, in us, if you want there to be an us. Raina looked from the empty storefront to Elliot's hopeful face. This is crazy, maybe. But for the first time in my life, I'm not making decisions based on profit margins or my father's approval. I'm making them based on what feels right, and this feels right. Before Raina could respond, a sleek black car pulled up behind Elliot's. The door opened, and an older man stepped out, tall, imposing, with the same blue eyes as Elliot, but none of the warmth that had recently entered them. Dad? Elliot said, clearly shocked. What are you doing here? Richard Maddox's cold gaze moved from his son to Raina, assessing her in her simple jeans and sweater. So this is her, he said, his voice dripping with disdain. This is who's been turning my son into a sentimental fool. Elliot stepped protectively in front of Raina. Don't speak to her like that. I'll speak however I want. Do you have any idea what you're doing to our company's reputation? The board is in an uproar. You've cancelled 3 major developments, donated millions to a nursing home, and now you're buying run-down buildings in neighborhoods not fit for our brand. How did you find me? Elliot demanded. Richard smirked. You think I don't have people watching out for my interests? Your assistant is very loyal to me. Claire? She's been spying on me, keeping me informed. There's a difference. Raina touched Elliot's arm. Maybe I should go. No, Elliot said firmly. You stay. Dad, you should leave. Richard's eyes narrowed. You're choosing this nobody over your own father, over the company I built from nothing. Elliot's voice was steady. Her name is Raina, and yes, if those are my options, I choose her, because she's shown me more about integrity and love in a few weeks than you have in my entire life. The older man's face reddened with anger. You ungrateful. That's enough, Elliot cut him off. Get back in your car and go back to Florida. I'll call you when I'm ready to talk civilly. For a moment, it looked like Richard might explode. Then, with visible effort, he controlled himself. This isn't over, he said coldly. When she's bled you dry, don't come crawling back. He got into his car and slammed the door. As the vehicle pulled away, Elliot let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "I'm so sorry about that," he said, turning to Raina. "My father is a lot like you were a month ago," Raina finished gently. Elliot looked startled, then thoughtful. "You're right, and that terrifies me. The difference is you're changing. You're choosing to be different." He took her hands in his. "Because of you." Raina shook her head. "No, you're changing because you want to, because somewhere inside, you always knew there was more to life than what your father taught you." They stood there on the sidewalk, the empty bookstore behind them, the future unwritten before them. Elliot had just stood up to his father, something he'd never done in 34 years. He'd chosen Raina, a woman he barely knew, over the approval he'd spent his life chasing, and it felt right. For the first time in his life, Elliot Maddox felt like he was making choices based on what he truly wanted, not what was expected of him. "About the bookstore," Raina said after a moment, "and about us." Elliot held his breath, waiting. "I think maybe we could try. Both, if we take it slow." The smile that spread across Elliot's face was so genuine, so unguarded, that Raina couldn't help but smile back. This was the real man, emerging from behind the walls he'd built. And she was discovering that she liked who she found there. As they walked back to the car, Elliot's phone buzzed with messages, undoubtedly fallout from his father's visit. But for once, he didn't reach for it. The business empire could wait. Right now, nothing was more important than the woman beside him, who had taught him what truly mattered in life. And as they drove away, heading toward the diner for their now customary dinner, Elliot felt a sense of peace he'd never known. Because for all his wealth and power, he'd been empty inside until Raina showed him what real richness looked like. It looked like her mother's fingers finding familiar notes on a piano, like Raina's face lit with joy at the sound, like the promise of a bookstore where memories could be made and shared. It looked like love, messy, complicated, inconvenient, wonderful love. And for the first time in his life, Elliot Maddox wasn't afraid to embrace it. 3 months had passed since the night Elliot's father confronted them outside the empty bookstore. Fall had turned to winter, bringing crisp air and holiday decorations to the city. For Elliot and Raina, they had been the most transformative months of their lives. The bookstore, now called Vivian's Corner, after Raina's mother, was taking shape. Elliot had hired contractors to renovate the space, but the design decisions were all Raina's. Large windows to let in natural light, cozy reading nooks with comfortable chairs, a small stage for poetry readings and music performances, a cafe area with tables accessible for wheelchairs. Today they were meeting with the interior designer to select the final touches before the grand opening scheduled for the new year. "What do you think about these shelves?" Raina asked, pointing to a warm cherry wood option. "Not too dark, not too light." Elliot smiled, watching her confident decision-making. "They're perfect." The designer made notes, then showed them fabric swatches for the window seats. Raina immediately gravitated toward a soft blue. "This reminds me of the curtains in our apartment when I was little," she explained. "My mother used to say it was the color of possibilities." Elliot took her hand, squeezing it gently. He loved these glimpses into her past, the stories that had shaped her. After the meeting, they walked to Elliot's car, their breath visible in the cold December air. "I need to stop by the office for a few hours," Elliot said. "Board meeting about the new affordable housing initiative. Do you want me to drop you at Sunny Pines?" Raina nodded. "Melody's doing a holiday concert with the residents today. Mum's been practicing Silent Night all week." Elliot's face lit up. "Really? That's wonderful." The music therapy program had been more successful than anyone could have imagined. Vivian Porter had good days more frequently now. She still struggled with memory, still had difficult moments, but the music had opened a door that everyone thought was permanently closed. "It's all because of you," Raina said softly as they drove. "The therapy, the piano, all of it." Elliot shook his head. "I just provided the resources. You're the one who never gave up on her." When they arrived at Sunny Pines, Raina leaned over and kissed him goodbye. These small gestures of affection still surprised Elliot. The casual touch of her hand on his arm, the way she absently played with his hair when they sat together on her couch. Physical affection had never been part of his life before Raina. "I'll pick you up at 6, he promised. "Then dinner?" Raina smiled. "It's your turn to cook, remember? You promised to show me this famous pasta dish you claim to make." Elliot laughed. "Famous might be an overstatement. It's the only thing I know how to cook. I'm looking forward to it." As Raina walked into Sunny Pines, she marveled at how much had changed. The once shabby care home now had fresh paint, new furniture, updated medical equipment. Most importantly, The staff had expanded with specialized training in dementia care. Raina found her mother in the recreation room, sitting at the piano with Melody. Several other residents were gathered around, some holding jingle bells or small tambourines. "Raina," her mother called, face brightening, "come sit with me, we're doing Christmas songs." These moments of clarity were precious gifts. Raina hurried over and sat beside her mother on the piano bench. "I've been practicing," Vivian told her proudly. "Listen." Her fingers, once graceful and sure, now moved more slowly over the keys. But the melody was clear. Silent Night, played with the care of someone who had once been a music teacher. "That's beautiful, Mama," Raina said, blinking back tears. "Your young man likes music too," Vivian remarked. "The handsome one who visits. Is he coming today?" "Later, Mama. He had to work." Vivian nodded sagely. "He's a good man, I can tell." "How can you tell?" Raina asked, curious about her mother's assessment. "By the way he looks at you when you're not watching," Vivian said simply. "That's how your father used to look at me before." She trailed off, a familiar cloud passing over her face. These moments happened too, clarity slipping away, memories blurring. "It's okay, Mama," Raina said quickly. "Let's sing with everyone." The afternoon passed in a blur of music and laughter. When 6 o'clock came, Raina was surprised to see not just Elliot but Claire, his assistant, entering the recreation room. Claire looked uncomfortable, her professional demeanor out of place among the casual warmth of Sunny Pines. Elliot's expression was tense. "Elliot? What's wrong?" Raina asked, immediately concerned. "My father," he said quietly. "He's making a move against me at the company. Claire overheard the plan and came to warn me." Claire stepped forward. "Mr. Maddox, I need to explain." "Not here," Elliot interrupted. "Let's go somewhere private." They moved to an empty visitor's lounge. As soon as the door closed, Claire began speaking rapidly. "I never meant to spy on you, Mr. Maddox. Your father asked me to keep him informed about company matters, and at first that's all it was. But then he started asking more personal questions about your schedule, who you were seeing. And you told him," Elliot said flatly. Claire looked ashamed. "Yes, I'm sorry, he's very persuasive, but what he's planning now is wrong. He's called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. He's going to try to have you removed as CEO." Raina gasped. "Can he do that?" "He still owns 40% of the company," Elliot explained. "With a few key allies on the board, yes, he could do it." "On what grounds?" Raina asked. Claire answered. "He's claiming that Mr. Maddox is making emotional business decisions that threaten the company's profitability. He's specifically citing the cancelled luxury developments, the donation to Sunny Pines, and the purchase of commercial property in undesirable neighborhoods. His words, not mine." Elliot's jaw tightened. "He's using my relationship with Raina and my recent charitable giving to paint me as unstable." "I'm so sorry," Raina whispered. "This is because of me." "No," Elliot said firmly. "This is because I'm finally making decisions my father doesn't control. This was inevitable." Claire cleared her throat. "There's more. Your father has been meeting with some of our biggest investors, showing them projections of how your new direction will supposedly hurt profits. He's been very persuasive." "What are you going to do?" Raina asked. Elliot was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he turned to Claire. "I need all the financial data for the past 5 years, and I need the preliminary numbers from the mixed income development we started in Brooklyn." Claire nodded. "I'll have it all sent to your email within the hour." "Thank you, Claire, and thank you for coming to me with this." After Claire left, Raina took Elliot's hand. "I guess pasta night is cancelled." He smiled despite the situation. "Rain check, I need to prepare for tomorrow." "Of course. Do you want me to come with you? For moral support?" Elliot looked surprised. "You would do that?" "Of course I would. Raina stopped herself, realizing what she had been about to say. It was too soon, wasn't it? They'd only been seeing each other for a few months. But Elliot seemed to hear the unspoken words anyway. His eyes softened as he pulled her close. "I love you too," he said quietly. "I think I have since the moment I saw you crying in that cafeteria. I just didn't know what the feeling was." Raina's heart skipped. "I love you," she said, no longer afraid of the words. "And we'll face this together." The next morning, Raina felt out of place in the sleek reception area of Maddox Properties. Her simple dress and cardigan were a stark contrast to the designer suits worn by everyone else. But Elliot had insisted she belonged there, and the gentle pressure of his hand on her back gave her confidence. The boardroom was intimidating, a long table of polished mahogany surrounded by serious-faced executives. At the far end sat Richard Maddox, looking smugly confident. His eyebrows rose when he saw Raina. Is this a business meeting or a social gathering, Elliot? Miss Porter is here at my invitation, Elliot said calmly, guiding Rayner to a seat beside him. She has valuable insight into some of the projects we'll be discussing. Richard's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing as the meeting was called to order. As chairman of the board, he spoke first. Ladies and gentlemen, I've called this emergency meeting because I believe Maddox Properties faces a crisis of leadership. My son, whom I proudly handed the reins to 5 years ago, has recently begun making decisions based on emotion rather than sound business judgment. He went on to detail Elliot's concerning behavior, the cancelled luxury developments, the charitable donations, the purchase of property in working-class neighborhoods. In short, Richard concluded, I believe Elliot's recent personal entanglements, here he glanced pointedly at Rayner, have clouded his business judgment. I move that he be temporarily removed as CEO while the board evaluates the situation. Murmurs circulated around the table. Several board members looked uncomfortable, but not necessarily opposed. Rayner felt her stomach knot with anxiety. If I may respond, Elliot said, standing. His voice was steady, confident in a way Rayner had never heard before. My father suggests that I've lost sight of what makes a business successful, that I've allowed emotions to override good judgment. I'd like to present an alternative view. He nodded to Claire, who distributed folders to everyone at the table. In these packets, you'll find financial projections for what my father calls my emotional decisions. The mixed-income development in Brooklyn is already attracting attention from responsible investors who value sustainability and community integration. Pre-sales are 20% higher than projected. He turned a page in his own folder. The affordable units we included in the Riverside project have generated exceptional press coverage, enhancing our brand reputation among younger, socially conscious buyers, exactly the demographic we need to court as our traditional client base ages. Board members were studying the numbers, looking more interested now. As for the charitable giving, specifically the donation to Sunny Pines Care Home, I've structured it as the cornerstone of the Maddox Foundation, which provides significant tax advantages while creating goodwill in communities where we hope to develop in the future. Richard interrupted. Pretty words, but the bottom line is you've abandoned 3 luxury developments that would have been guaranteed profit makers. Have I? Elliot countered. Let's look at the Manhattan luxury market right now. More pages were turned, charts displayed. Oversaturation, prices dropping, units sitting empty for months. Meanwhile, the demand for mixed-income sustainable developments is growing. I haven't abandoned profit, Father. I've repositioned us to be ahead of market trends. Rayner watched with pride as Elliot methodically addressed every accusation his father had made, backing each point with data. This was the businessman she'd rarely seen, brilliant, strategic, forward-thinking. Finally, Elliot said, I'd like to address the personal accusation. Yes, I am in a relationship with Rayner Porter. No, she does not influence my business decisions, at least not in the way my father suggests. He looked at Rayner, his eyes softening for just a moment before returning to the board. What Rayner has given me is perspective. The understanding that a truly successful business doesn't just generate profit for shareholders, it creates value for communities, for employees, for the world we all share. That isn't weak or emotional thinking. It's the future of business. Richard stood up, face flushed with anger. This is absurd. You're talking like some college activist, not the CEO of a major corporation. Times change, Dad, Elliot said calmly. Either we change with them, or we get left behind. The board members were exchanging glances now, some nodding thoughtfully. I move we table this discussion, said Barbara Chen, the most senior board member. These projections deserve careful consideration. Elliot has made a compelling case for his strategic vision. I second that, added another member. Richard looked around the table, realizing he was losing control of the narrative. This isn't over, he said, gathering his papers. Not by a long shot. As the meeting broke up, several board members approached Elliot, asking questions about the Brooklyn development, expressing interest in the Maddox Foundation. No one spoke to Richard, who stood alone at the end of the table, watching his son with a mixture of anger and something that might have been grudging respect. When everyone else had left, Richard finally approached Elliot and Rayner. You've changed, he said to his son. I'm not sure I like it. I've grown, Elliot corrected. There's a difference. Richard's gaze shifted to Rayner. And I suppose I have you to thank for that. No, Rayner said firmly. Elliot always had this in him. He just needed permission to be who he really is, not who you wanted him to be. Richard looked taken aback by her directness. You're certainly not what I expected. What did you expect? Raina asked. Someone after his money, his position. If that's what you think, you don't know your son very well, Raina said. Elliot is worth loving for who he is, not what he has. Richard studied her for a long moment, then turned back to Elliot. Your mother would have liked her, he said unexpectedly. She always said you needed someone who could see past the Maddox name. It was as close to approval as they were likely to get. After an awkward handshake with his son and a nod to Raina, Richard left the boardroom. Did that just happen? Raina asked, stunned by the almost civil end to the confrontation. Elliot looked equally surprised. I think my father just gave us his blessing, in his own twisted way. They left the office hand in hand, both feeling like they'd crossed an important threshold. The threat to Elliot's position wasn't entirely gone, but he'd made a strong case. More importantly, he'd stood up for his vision, for his values, for the love that had changed everything. 6 months later, on a perfect spring day, Vivian's Corner bookstore held its grand opening. The line stretched down the block. Neighbors, Sunny Pines residents in wheelchairs pushed by staff members, curious book lovers drawn by the write-up in the local paper. Raina stood behind the counter, greeting customers with the same warm smile she'd once reserved for her mother's care home visits. Elliot moved through the crowd, making sure the elderly visitors had comfortable places to sit, that the refreshments table stayed full. In a place of honor near the small stage sat Vivian Porter, having one of her good days. She wore a new dress for the occasion, her white hair styled by the visiting beautician Elliot had arranged for the Sunny Pines residents. When the initial rush slowed, Elliot took the microphone. I want to thank everyone for coming today. Vivian's Corner isn't just a bookstore, it's a community space, a place where stories can be shared and memories made. He glanced at Raina, who was watching him with pride. This store exists because of one extraordinary woman who taught me that success isn't measured by profit margins or real estate portfolios. It's measured by how much love we bring into the world. Cheers erupted from the crowd. Elliot continued, I'd like to invite Raina Porter, the manager and heart of Vivian's Corner, to say a few words. Raina joined him at the microphone, squeezing his hand before taking it. Dreams come in different sizes, she began. Sometimes they're as big as running your own business. Sometimes they're as simple as finding a good book to read to someone you love. She looked at her mother, who was smiling broadly. This store is named for my mother, Vivian Porter, who taught me that love is a choice we make every day, a choice to show up, to care, to give what we can even when it's hard. Her eyes found Elliot's in the crowd. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, love finds us when we least expect it. It challenges us to be better, to see beyond ourselves. After the speeches, as customers browsed the shelves and Melody led a sing-along with the Sunny Pines residents, Elliot pulled Raina into the small office at the back of the store. There's something I need to ask you, he said, looking uncharacteristically nervous. What is it? Raina asked. To her shock, Elliot knelt down on one knee and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Raina Porter, he said, his voice full of emotion, you changed my life the moment you walked into it. You taught me what matters. You showed me what love looks like. Will you marry me? He opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. Raina's hands flew to her mouth, tears springing to her eyes. Elliot, I know it might seem fast, he rushed on. We've only been together 9 months, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Raina pulled him to his feet. Yes, she said, her voice breaking with joy. Yes, I'll marry you. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Raina added, but I have one condition. Anything. We live in my apartment, at least part-time. That penthouse of yours is beautiful, but it never felt like a home. Elliot laughed, pulling her close. Deal, though we might need to upgrade to a slightly larger apartment. Maybe in this neighborhood, close to the store, and to Sunny Pines. I'd like that, Raina said, kissing him softly. When they returned to the main store, Vivian immediately noticed the ring. Did he finally ask you? She demanded, eyes twinkling. I told him weeks ago not to wait too long. You knew? Raina asked, surprised. Of course I knew. He asked for my blessing. Vivian reached for both their hands, holding them in her frail ones. Life is short, my darlings. Too short to waste a moment of love when you find it. It was one of her clearest moments in months, a precious gift on this already perfect day. As the afternoon light streamed through the windows of Vivian's Corner, casting a golden glow over the books and the people who had come to celebrate, Elliot stood with his arm around Raina, watching her mother play a simple tune on the small piano they'd installed in the children's section. 9 months ago, he had been a different man, cold, isolated, measuring success in dollars and deals. Then he had followed his maid home one night and witnessed a kind of love he'd never understood before. Now, looking at the ring on Raina's finger, at the store they'd created together, at the community forming around them, Elliot finally understood what wealth truly meant. It wasn't the penthouse or the company or the investment portfolio. It was this: the joy in Raina's eyes as she watched her mother play, the knowledge that he had made a difference in the lives of the Sunny Pines residents, the feeling of Raina's hand in his, a promise of partnership that went beyond romance to something deeper, more enduring. Love wasn't just a feeling. It was a choice you made every day, a choice to show up, to care, to give what you could, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the bookstore windows, Elliot and Raina stood together, surrounded by the life they were building. Not his, not hers, but theirs. A life grounded in the understanding that true wealth wasn't something you could count or spend. It was something you carried in your heart and brought into every room you entered, even the ones that didn't deserve it, until they did. The end.